The actor and former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, has told the BBC that people should stop whining about President Trump's approach to climate change.
Arnold Schwarzenegger did not hold back when he turned his attention toward Donald Trump after the former president's controversial return to power. The clash came only a few months into Trump's second term, one that began after he narrowly defeated Kamala Harris in a bitterly fought election that divided the nation even more than his first victory years earlier. Trump had promised a triumphant resurgence, but instead, his second presidency quickly became mired in turbulence, disapproval, and personal scandal. It was against this backdrop that Schwarzenegger, long recognized not only for his Hollywood fame, but also for his political career as the former governor of California, delivered a searing takedown that reverberated across political, media, and cultural circles. His words and actions carried weight, not simply because of his celebrity stature, but because he represented a figure who had successfully navigated both entertainment and politics, two worlds that Trump himself had claimed to dominate. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The timing of Schwarzenegger's broadside was significant. Trump's first few months of his second term had already been defined by infighting within his administration, rocky relations with Congress, and the re-emergence of old controversies that refused to fade. The American public had expected some level of stability, or perhaps even maturity, the second time around. But what they witnessed instead felt like a continuation, if not an escalation, of the chaos from before. Trump's base remained loyal, but outside of that core group, frustration mounted. Schwarzenegger's attack then was not merely a celebrity weighing in on politics. It was the voice of someone who had once been a Republican leader in one of the nation's most influential states, who now openly denounced the party's most dominant figure. Central to Schwarzenegger's criticism was the series of allegations that Trump had engaged in multiple secret affairs even after returning to the White House, betraying his wife Melania once again. The affair accusations, although not entirely new in Trump's orbit, struck harder this time because they came when he was supposed to be solidifying his legacy as a rare two-term Republican president in the 21st century. For Schwarzenegger, who has himself faced public scrutiny over personal scandals, the matter hit particularly close. Yet he seemed to use his own experiences as a moral lens, framing Trump's alleged actions not as tabloid fodder, but as evidence of a deeper pattern of dishonesty and recklessness that made him unfit to lead. By invoking these personal failings, Schwarzenegger highlighted how the private behavior of leaders spills into the public realm, corroding trust and weakening the nation's image at home and abroad. The spectacle of one iconic figure confronting another captivated audiences worldwide. Trump, a man whose political style thrived on confrontation, suddenly found himself at the receiving end of a takedown from a figure who matched his bravado, but wielded it with a different purpose. Schwarzenegger's critique wasn't couched in the calculated language of Washington insiders. Instead, it carried the bluntness of someone who had built a career on straight talk, whether in blockbuster films or in Sacramento's governor's mansion. That bluntness mattered. To many Americans who had grown numb to polished political speeches and partisan spin, Schwarzenegger's attack rang clear as an unfiltered judgment of Trump's performance and character. What made the moment even more explosive was the fact that Trump's victory over Kamala Harris had been sold to his supporters as proof of his enduring political genius. Defeating Harris, who had risen to national prominence as vice president and then as a presidential contender, was no small feat. It was supposed to validate Trump's claim that he remained unstoppable despite impeachment attempts, investigations, and controversies. Yet Schwarzenegger's criticism dismantled that narrative. Instead of celebrating Trump's second chance, the former governor painted it as a squandered opportunity marked by scandal and failure. In doing so, he challenged not just Trump himself, but the myth of Trump's invincibility. The personal dimension of Schwarzenegger's attack cannot be overstated. By calling out Trump's alleged affairs, he dragged into the open a reality that Melania Trump had endured for years: speculation about her husband's loyalty. These revelations struck at the core of the image Trump projected of himself: a family man, a billionaire patriarch, a symbol of traditional success. To have another prominent man in American culture denounce him on those very grounds stripped away part of his carefully constructed persona. It raised uncomfortable questions about whether Trump's leadership failures were inseparable from his personal indiscretions, and whether the country could afford to ignore such patterns any longer. For Schwarzenegger, the confrontation was also an opportunity to reassert his voice in American politics. Though no longer in office, he had retained influence as a commentator on civic responsibility, fitness, climate action, and bipartisan cooperation. By attacking Trump so forcefully, he positioned himself once more as a moral counterweight to the chaos of Trumpism. He embodied a different model of Republican leadership, one rooted in pragmatism and discipline rather than spectacle and grievance. This contrast was not lost on the public. Where Trump thrived on division, Schwarzenegger sought to evoke unity. Where Trump's scandals drew attention to indulgence and betrayal, Schwarzenegger framed his criticisms around the idea of accountability and responsibility. The clash also illuminated the shifting cultural dynamics of American politics. Celebrity has long played a role in shaping political fortunes, but rarely had the spectacle of one celebrity politician condemning another carried such gravity. Schwarzenegger's remarks were covered extensively, not only in traditional political outlets, but in entertainment media, late-night television, and global news platforms. The convergence of Hollywood and Washington, already blurred by Trump's rise, reached a new crescendo with this moment. It reminded Americans that politics had become as much about image and narrative as about policy, and that figures outside elected office could wield enormous influence by shaping how leaders were perceived. The implications extended beyond personalities. Schwarzenegger's criticism touched on questions about what the Republican Party had become. Trump's dominance had reshaped the GOP and his image, but not all conservatives were comfortable with that transformation. By stepping forward, Schwarzenegger gave voice to those who yearned for an alternative, Republicans and independents who still valued conservative principles but recoiled at the scandals and divisiveness. His intervention reignited debates about whether the party could reclaim its identity or whether it was permanently bound to Trump's orbit. For younger conservatives and disillusioned moderates, Schwarzenegger's takedown offered a rare glimpse of dissent from someone who had once been embraced by the party establishment yet remained unafraid to challenge its current leader. As the affair allegations swirled, the public spectacle took on an even more dramatic dimension. Questions about Melania Trump's role in response resurfaced, even though she had largely retreated from the spotlight since her husband's re-election. The idea that a sitting president, already facing immense scrutiny for his governance, was embroiled once again in personal betrayals cast a long shadow over his second administration. Schwarzenegger's condemnation lent legitimacy to the whispers, giving them weight in the national conversation. This was no longer just gossip. It was being framed as evidence of character flaws that bore directly on Trump's fitness to serve. The episode underscored how fragile Trump's political capital truly was. Even after winning a second term, victory did not equate to immunity. By shining a spotlight on his failures so early in his second term, Schwarzenegger shifted the conversation from triumph to turmoil. It forced Americans to confront whether they had re-elected not a leader prepared to guide the nation through turbulent times, but a man unable to rise above his own chaos. The symbolism of a Hollywood icon standing up to a president who had once blurred the lines between reality television and politics was striking. It represented, in many ways, the collision of two eras of American celebrity culture, with one man exposing the cracks in the other's carefully maintained facade. The resonance of Schwarzenegger's attack came not only from its content, but from its timing. By striking early in Trump's second term, he ensured that the criticisms would color the rest of the presidency. Every decision Trump made afterward would be filtered through the lens of those allegations and that searing denunciation. Instead of basking in the glow of re-election, Trump was forced to contend with renewed scrutiny and questions about his legitimacy, integrity, and stability. Schwarzenegger's voice became part of the chorus that defined how Americans would perceive those first months, and possibly the remainder of Trump's time in office. The episode was also a reminder of how narratives of power and masculinity play out in the political arena. Both Trump and Schwarzenegger had cultivated images of strong, larger-than-life figures. Trump through business and politics, Schwarzenegger through film and politics. Their confrontation was not just about policy or scandal, but about who embodied the ideal of leadership in American culture. Schwarzenegger's attack struck at Trump's perceived strength, reframing it as weakness born from indulgence and dishonesty. For a president who thrived on projecting dominance, such a reframing was devastating. It stripped away part of the mystique that had carried him through countless controversies before. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Arnold confronting Trump after his second election win? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.